was on the phone there. I was required it, but then again, it's not on back up before the point, but we won't have it.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's public forum being held in the council chambers for this Monday, the 8th of May. We'll start with item number 1, recording of public forum. And this public forum is being audio recorded for administrative purposes. By speaking at the public forum, you agree to being recorded. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this public forum that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this public forum. Item 2, conflict of interest declarations received by the chair. There are none. Item number 3, speakers. We'll welcome our first speaker via video link. It's in relation to, item 3.1, Julie Garoni. Item 13.1, DA 10.2018.35932.5, modification of consent, dual occupancy, 654 Pemberton Street, Albury, speaking for the recommendation. Good evening, Julie. I trust you can hear us okay, and at your leisure, feel free to say your piece. Thanks, Julie. Welcome.
Okay, I hope you can hear me too. Thank you. Thank you for letting me present tonight. The council staff's report refers to the development as a site that is already overdeveloped. This development has in excess of 40 non-conformances when compared to the original DA. The developer failed to build both the original DA and the construction certificate. There were 3 different sets of plans. Over 1 metre in height was added to the studio garage rear building, with the majority of this being 600 millimetres in the first storey. This 600 millimetre height increase was added for no other reason than, as the developer told a councillor during a site visit, to provide greater headroom and a feeling of space in the studio above the garage. An entire elevation was moved 800 millimetres towards our private space, and it has been proven that elements of the developer's retaining wall encroach onto our property without our permission. This is a saga that has been drawn out by a developer refusing to abide by, firstly, the original DA, or abide by the council's refusal of the 2 previous mod of consents, and now the developer's failure to abide by the approved mod of consent granted last year. It is our opinion that we are here once again because people are hoping that if this latest mod of consent is approved, that perhaps this time, the 5th time, the developer will actually abide by the plans and conditions. History has shown that the developer, the private certifier, and the builder chose not to build to the original DA. Otherwise, we would have a development that matched the original DA next door and we would not be here. I'm sure that most people have heard of the saying, past behaviour is a predictor of future behaviour. Similar to the original DA, we are being asked to support a mod of consent because the developer designed it and therefore the developer will abide by it. We believe this is naive given that the past history is screaming loudly and clearly. The original DA was designed by the developer and look at what happened. The developer is still the same developer. The builder still has his promotional information hanging from the fence, so the builder will probably be the same. And it is our opinion that the certifier, albeit working for a different business, will probably be the same too. How will there be a different outcome? It would also be naive for the developer and other representatives to simply dismiss our concerns as anti-development. There's another development being conducted directly behind our property, and we have not had one issue, nor written a submission in response to the original DA. The only reason we support this mod of consent is because all of the conditions of the approved mod of consent, DA 10.2018.35932.4, are being kept. This support should not be interpreted as us agreeing that this is a superior outcome, nor should it be taken as us believing that the developer will build this mod of consent just because the developer has created this mod of consent. Supposedly, the developer will tonight be making some last-minute requests about removing and changing the conditions. We state categorically that we are absolutely not supportive of the developer's last-minute proposed changes to the conditions. We've been quite clear throughout this saga that the developer's aim has always been to place any external services or plant on the western elevation, thereby enhancing the development's amenity to the detriment of our amenity. At the council meeting last year, when the developer's solicitor held an impromptu cross-examination of my thoughts on each of the conditions, I was absolutely clear that we wanted the conditions kept and they were important in order to protect our amenity. This last-minute proposed removal of condition A14.2 will adversely impact our amenity. In addition to the bulk and scale of the rear studio garage not being moderated, the developer will now be permitted to place external services and plant on the newly created 2-metre setback. How does this improve our situation? And the council staff in their report state, removing this segment of the condition would result in a wall that does not provide for a softening of the external wall. In December and January, we asked the developer to provide assurances that there would be nothing placed on the new 2-metre setback. The developer's reply in January 2023 was, as per council's request, it is confirmed that no external services, plant, machinery or equipment will be located on the 2-metre ground floor return of the rear studio and garage building as demonstrated in the above roof plan. It is our opinion that the developer's last-minute request to remove and alter conditions indicates that the developer's written word has a 4-month expiry date. In fact, our submission stated the following: anything placed on this 2-metre upper level setback will totally void any amenity bulk reduction improvement that would occur from the 2-metre upper level setback. Our submission explained in detail that the proposed 2-metre upper level setback translates into a total of 3 first-storey upper level setbacks directly adjacent to our property. Stage 1 has 1 and stage 2 will now have 2, all of which are visible from our backyard, all of which have the ability to impact our amenity. The last-minute changes sought for A15 will also adversely impact our amenity. This change will permit services and plant to be placed on the setback of the studio garage and the setback of the middle building. This site, in the council staff's words, is already overdeveloped. The last-minute requests of the developer will only add to the overdevelopment and detrimentally impact our amenity. We sincerely hope that because this mod of consent facilitates the developer keeping the additional 1,070 millimetres in height, including the 600 millimetre greater headroom and filling of space in the studio above the garage, that the developer will follow through with this mod of consent instead of dragging us back to another council meeting at a future date. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation, Julie. Councillors, any questions at all for Julie in the wake of that? Thank you so much for your time. Our next speaker, 3.2, Matt Johnson, also in relation to item 13.1, the development application at 654 Pemberton Street, Albury, speaking for the recommendation. Good evening, Matt.
Thank you. Thanks, Meking. Evening, everyone. As Meking mentioned, I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant tonight. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail in terms of it, but just a very brief overview, as the previous presenter talked about, was there was a previous approval granted. we're seeking some changes to that, what we believe will help improve the situation for the adjoining neighbour. So a quick summary of those is the introduction of a 2 metre upper level setback, reduction of that first floor component of that rear building, some relocation of some windows. And yes, as the previous presenter spoke, we were looking at changing some of those conditions. So I'll visually show it a little bit better. So the top, looking at this picture, this is a copy of the elevation looking north, so towards the Ended Lane. So the top picture is what was approved, and you can see the floor area and the width of that first floor component is 8.19 metres, and we're proposing to introduce an upper level setback just to get it further off the boundary, which you can see there, which I've outlined. So that reduces that by 2 metres. Similarly, this is the southern elevation. So this is looking internal of the site and towards the neighbour. So again, the view corridor that they will have is it'll reduce that impact that they've got. So the next image probably shows it a bit better. So this is viewing it from the neighbour next door. So once we had the approval last time, we went away and had a bit of a look at it. We believe this will give a little more relief to the neighbour next door, because as you can see, the ground floor component on the right-hand side, which is what we're proposing, will largely be screened by the adjoining shed and a fence that's been erected there. And then what you're looking at is a much less vertical building right on the boundary. So it's actually been stepped back away. What we've also shown is this is just it from Ended Lane, so just from a different perspective as well. And so what we're proposing is that we'll just be set back 2 metres from that boundary, and as a result, that first floor component will be reduced. So giving it as a bit of a perspective when you look at it, it's a bit hard to tell these lines here, but the line here on the very left-hand side was that's as it's built today. So the lines show if you're standing in the backyard of the neighbouring property next door, that's what they're currently looking at. They're looking up at quite a high solid wall. Moving along, the next coloured line that you've got there on that slide is a blue coloured line. So that was what the original, sorry, it's a green coloured line. That's what council approved last time at the last meeting. The blue line is what was originally constructed, originally approved as, and then the red line is what we're proposing. So it's a little bit difficult to interpret that, but essentially what would happen is if you're standing in the backyard next door, you'll be looking at less of a solid wall from that backyard. So for that reason, we believe that this will help improve the situation a little bit for the neighbour next door. And the reason that we were talking about as well, potentially of modifying the condition, is council's currently got a requirement that this western wall of the building have some sort of alternative treatment so it doesn't look so vertical. We believe adding this 2 metre setback and essentially stepping the building in will just make it look less bulky from the neighbours next door. And taking on the point from the previous presenter as well about some concerns about infrastructure or plant or machinery or anything being located up there, we actually in our presentation and our response back to council staff offered to have that as a condition included as part of that. We have no intention to put any plant or equipment there, and we actually offered that if council wanted to put a condition to that effect, we would be happy to accept that, which staff at the time said it was unnecessary because if we did do anything there, it would need an approval anyways. But again, just hearing the previous presenter, we're happy to have a condition about that. So in conclusion, essentially what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a bit more of a middle ground for both parties. We believe that the 2 metre upper level setback will help that in terms of help giving a bit of relief for next door, but allowing the project to move forward. And as a result of that, we would just request that that western wall cladding treatment be removed. Also, because potentially having a different cladding on that side of the building might actually cause a bit of a visual, might visually draw your eye to it, of having the whole building clad in, say, vertical cladding, and then you've got a different cladding on the side of the wall. It might actually visually draw your eye to it, which might make it a bit more prominent. So overall, we support council staff recommendations, but just subject to a couple of very minor changes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Our next speaker, so item 3.3, Ron Emptage, also in relation to the development application, 654 Pemberton Street, Albury, speaking for the recommendation. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. Thanks, Mayor King and councillors. I just need to respond to Ms. Garoni's presentation. She's made this presentation on 3 other occasions. It's a good presentation and it's worked to delay this project for 4 years, but it's all smoke and mirrors. She mentioned a whole lot of things there.
Excuse me, Mr. Mtich, if you could relate to the matter at hand rather than another speaker's presentation, that would be helpful. Thank you.
I'm not allowed to refute her points, you're saying?
It's not a debate, I guess, is the point that we're making. Could you
okay,
speak
well,
to your...
I'm just saying she's made the presentation before and
thank you.
the officers have taken that into account. This matter has now dragged on for 4 years and enough is enough. The reason this saga has gone on for so long is because you councillors and the councillors before you were never told the truth. You should have been told the truth. I've worked in this industry for more than 40 years. I've never witnessed a situation like
Point
this
of order,
before.
Mr. Mtich, you are not speaking in relation to the matter before us, not interested in making comments in relation to councillors or council staff or anything on that matter. It's not a debate. You're not here to debate previous conversations and decisions. Could you please stick to
I'll just follow as we're saying.
If not, we'll have to put an end to your presentation. Thank
Okay,
you.
I'll just say
Stick
this
to
is
the
only
facts,
a
please.
there's only a 2-storey building, not a 6 or 9-storey building. 2-storey buildings are common in Albury. I urge you to accept the planning officer's recommendation and not defer this matter anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any questions? Thank you for your presentation. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's council meeting being held in the council chambers for this Monday, the 8th of May. We'll start with item 1, the opening affirmation and acknowledgement of country. We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom and common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all. We would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today and pay our respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. A reminder that this council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. CM3, conflict of interest declarations received by the chair and disclosures of political donations. Item 3.1, conflict of interest declarations.
Thank you.
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor King. No conflict of interest declarations received. And item 3.2 is the disclosure of political donations. The Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, section 10.4 requires a person submitting planning applications or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on council's website or from the customer service centre. It must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the Council Officer's report, detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan or a development contribution plan under that Act, but not including the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. CM4, apologies. There are none. CM 4.2, attendance by councillors at a meeting by audio-visual link. There is none. CM5, mayoral minute. I do have a mayoral minute in relation to damaging increase in emergency services levy costs. I have a recommendation that 1, Council writes to the New South Wales Treasurer, the Minister for Emergency Services, the Minister for Local Government and local state member. A, expressing Council's strong opposition to the New South Wales Government's last-minute decision to impose an enormous emergency services levy, known as an ESL, cost increase on councils for 2023-24 by scrapping the ESL subsidy for councils, and at a time after Council has publicly advertised its operational plan and annual budget to the community. B, noting that as a consequence of the unannounced 73% increase in the State Emergency Service budget and an 18% increase in the Fire and Rescue New South Wales budget, Council's 3.7 rate increase to provide essential community services and infrastructure has been significantly eroded. C, calling on the New South Wales Government to take immediate action to 1, restore the ESL subsidy in 2023-24, 2, urgently introduce legislation to decouple the ESL from the rate peg to enable councils to recover the full cost, 3, develop a fairer, more transparent and financially sustainable method of funding critically important emergency services in consultation with local government. 2, Council writes to the Chair of the Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal, IPART, advising that Council's forced emergency services contribution is manifestly disproportionate to the 2023-24 rate cap, which has resulted in additional financial stress. Council writes to the President of LG NSW seeking the association's ongoing advocacy to bring about a relief in the burden of Council's emergency services contribution. So I'd like to move that. Councillors, would anyone like to? Councillor Cameron has a question.
Thank you, Mayor King. Through you, the most appropriate member of staff. When did the government make this decision and when did they announce it? I see it's being described as a last-minute decision. Can we get some understanding around the time frame, please, through you, Mayor King?
Mr. Zaknich?
In the last week, Councillor Cameron, through you, Mayor King.
Thank you.
Any follow-ups? Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Glacken?
Very happy with this mayoral minute. Thank you very much. And considering the timing circumstances, absolutely. This is another example of an attempt to cost shift, and it is a rather alarming attempt to cost shift because it is simply being imposed on councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glacken. I'm happy to speak to it if required, but it looks like there's support there. So in that case, if there are no further speakers for or against, happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM6, action plans. Would a councillor like to move? Thank you. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress. And 4, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Thank you. Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second.
Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to?
Thank you, Mayor King.
Any councillors, any speakers for or against? In that case, happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. CM7, confirmation of minutes of previous meetings. CM 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on the 24th of April 2023 at 6 p.m. Councillor Betteridge.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that the minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 24th of April 2023 at 6 p.m. be confirmed.
Thank you. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Happy to second the motion.
Any speakers for or against? If not, happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. Thank you. CM8, reports from community forums. There are none. Notices of motion, notices of rescission. There are none. CM10, presentations and deputations. We have none of those. CM11, reports or minutes of committees and working parties. CM11.1, minutes of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 11th of April. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Sustainability Advisory Committee meeting held on Tuesday, the 11th of April, 2023. B, endorses the following applications identified for approval for round 1 of the Land Management Incentive Program. Mr. Steve McKinney, $5,000. Bungawana Splitters Creek Landcare Group Incorporated, $17,258.25. Woolshed Thaguna Landcare Group, $45,918. Mr. Francesco Calabria, $5,000. Mrs. Janice Frey, $5,000. Ms. Sue Rose, $963.80. Mr. Thomas Webb, $25,000. Mr. Tom Weldon, $5,000. Mrs. Eleanor Pearson, $2,460. And Caledania Park Proprietary Limited, $5,000. And B, the budget be adjusted, the budget be adjusted at a future quarterly budget review to cover additional $16,573 to fully fund these projects.
Councillor Edwards.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, we do have a question, but do you wish to speak to the motion?
I'll take the question first. That's
Thank you. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor King. I actually have a number of questions, but first one, who is the chairperson of the Sustainability Advisory Committee?
Councillor Thurley.
Thank you. Just from the minutes, when the committee discussed a representative on the proposed Eastern Hill Advisory Panel, was a particular person proposed as the representative?
Mr. Thurley,
No.
follow up.
Thank you. Yeah, I've got to follow up. Has a nomination for the Eastern Hill Advisory Panel been submitted as the representative on that particular panel?
Councillor Thurley.
Yes, I received an email that Mr. Stuart Lucas had nominated Jonathan Howard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor Thurley?
Just briefly to note that we have a group of people there who, with support of council, will carry out environmental works on their land and in some cases on our land. But it's a great cooperation between community members and council to get these works done, and they are important and critical works. Thank you.
Thank you. Any speakers for, against, or questions, councillors? Happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? That motion is carried. Thank you. CM12, documents for sealing. There are none. CM13, officers' reports for consideration. CM 13.1 DA 10.2018.3593.2.5, modification of consent, dual occupancy, 1 additional residence, garage and studio, 2 lot Torrens title subdivision, boundary adjustment and consolidation of lots 1 and 2, DP 726722 and lot 1, DP 16443, 654 Pemberton Street, Albury. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives and notes the contents of this report, and B agrees to modify the approved development as shown in the attached amended plans and as described in the additional information provided, and grants consent to development application number 10.2018.35932.5 for dual occupancy development, 1 additional residence, garage and studio, 2 lot Torrens title subdivision, boundary adjustment and consolidation of lots 1 and 2 in DP 26722 and lot 1 in DP 16443 on land situated at 654 Pemberton Street, Albury, subject to the modified and additional conditions detailed in the attached draft modified development consent.
Very happy
Councillor
to
Glacken.
second that.
Thank you. Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Just to note that we had 3 speakers tonight, all of whom were speaking in favour of this development. And therefore, after 5 long years, we've finally reached a state where the relevant parties will accept this development. I note that there was a last minute attempt to change some consent conditions, but the motion does not allow that. And the consent conditions contained in attachment 6 to this report are the conditions of consent.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Speaker against, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. I don't feel I can support this motion. This has been an unhappy project from its inception, it seems. There's never been, I think, any concession that I've heard in this chamber that there has been lack of conformity with the original development proposal. That seems to be something that the proponents for this project have never conceded. Going forward, I think council would do well, in my personal view, to adopt a zero tolerance policy in terms of development applications, that where people do not meet the terms of their development applications, then council takes a very rigorous, and indeed far more rigorous than we have in this case, enforcement standpoint. Thank you.
Question, Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. My understanding of the conditions are that they include that no equipment is allowed to be within 2 meters of the boundary. And if that is the case, does that also ensure that no equipment will be placed? Because my understanding is there is no condition that equipment should not be placed on that newly created setback section that has been introduced with this last application. Can you confirm that no equipment would be able to be included on that setback?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. So condition A15 of the proposed consent, which was added in the last approved modification by council in 2022, it says, in regards to the location of external services and plant, to protect the amenity of the neighbouring dwelling to the west, any roof, wall or ground mounted air conditioning or other equipment associated with internal climate control devices should be located on the eastern side of the garage, studio and the middle building. So that pops it on the eastern side, obviously not on the western side, even with the reduced setback. There's also condition A16, which more talks about information structures on the roof, and also talks about those not being adjacent to the western boundary. But I believe the one you're talking to requires any such equipment like that to be on the eastern side, so not near the western boundary.
Thank you. And just to make it perfectly clear, because there was a suggestion this evening made by one of the speakers that they would be happy for a condition to be included saying that no equipment would be on that new setback. In essence, there's no requirement for that because it's not possible for them to have anything on that new setback because it all has to be on the eastern side of the block.
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question for you, Mayor King. Yes, it requires stuff on the eastern elevation, doesn't permit it on the western elevation.
Thank you. So that would be superfluous. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another question, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King, and through to the relevant member of staff to follow on from Councillor Glacken's question. So we spoke about equipment, but what about other things that can be placed on that roof, like anything that's not an equipment? It might be a tree, a pot plant, something of that nature. Is it anything allowed to be on that roof line of the setback?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question and for you, Mayor King. No, it doesn't go to that detail. It's quite specific in condition, more dealing with permanent structures, things such as pot plants and the like, I suspect are easily removed and the like, but obviously permanent constructions such as air conditioning condensers, which have the ability obviously to, one, be visually intrusive, but also can have noise issues. That was the intent of the condition, to deal with permanent fixtures or attachments.
Thank you. I just was under the understanding that was to help with the viewpoint. So just understanding about whether there's anything that's able to block the view that's been hopefully aided by that 2 metre setback. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Speaker 4, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'm speaking for the motion this evening. I think there's been 5 years of personal and financial stress and anguish from both parties potentially. I'll be approving the modifications put forward this evening. I think the building, should it go ahead, will improve the amenity and streetscape of Pemberton Street. And I hope both parties are happy with the resolution tonight, and Ms. Garoni and Mr. Emtage walk away with what they're after. I think there's been a lot of compromise to get to this point, and I think it's the best outcome for both parties. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Mayor King. As one of 6 councillors elected at the last council elections, I haven't got any baggage or animosity regarding either the developer or the objector to this. I think it's time it was put to rest and completed, and I will be supporting the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. There are no further speakers for or against. Councillor Thurley, do you care to wrap up?
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to note that, as with Councillor Baker, I have no animosity towards any party in this matter. It has taken 5 long years to get here, and we have approved already at least on three separate occasions we've approved modifications, and the latest one was in May last year, and we approved the development. And now we are back with further modification requested, which we are now approving tonight. And I think Ms. Garoni indicated that she was satisfied with the development. She was concerned that conditions were being asked to change, but apart from that, she was happy. And so I hope that we can get on with this.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. In that case, we'll put the motion, we'll call a division. Those for: Councillors Thurley, Callaghan, Edwards, Bowen, King, Betteridge, Glacken and Baker. Those against: Councillor Cameron. That motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Our next item, CM 13.2, new public toilets at Hoveltree Park, contract number 22/00790. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council accepts the tender from MBS FM Proprietary Limited for the lump sum contract number 22/00790 for the construction of public toilets at Hoveltree Park for the contract value of $832,480, including GST.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion, Mayor King.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thanks.
Question, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mayor King. Through you to the most appropriate member of staff. The amount of $832,480 for a toilet block, I'm sure to many people in Albury will seem a very large amount of money. Can staff further elucidate council on, is this an extraordinary amount of money, or is it something that is average now for this sort of project?
Mr. Miller.
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. Yeah, look, certainly the budget for this project was $880,000. So we're comfortable that this tender submission is within the expectations of this sort of project.
I guess
Follow up.
I guess I have to say that it's my understanding there are many very, very pleasant 4-bedroom homes built for that amount of money. How is it that a toilet block is so expensive?
Mr. Millett.
Through you, Mayor King, and thank you for the question again. We've gone through a tender process and we've put it to the market, and the market determines the value that these tenders come back at. As outlined, the budget that we put forward for this project was 880,000, and so it's come back within that budget estimate. So I'm comfortable that the community is getting value for money.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Callaghan.
Yes, thank you, Mayor King, to the most relevant staff member. Can you explain the reasoning behind general neutral toilets and the move to that space rather than having male and female toilets?
Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mayor King. Look, certainly when council went out to develop the public toilet strategy in 2019-20, there was discussions about all of the factors involved in presenting public toilets for our community. One of the points of discussion was about the provision of gender neutral toilets, and it was to give access to all aspects of our community so that they feel comfortable and safe utilising these facilities.
Thank you. Another question, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King, and through to the relevant member of staff. I was out to check out the Forest Grove toilets today, and just see the outcome of what's happening out there. They have 4 there, plus also a disabled space which has an adult changing table, and it also has a hoist from above as well too to enable that. So I understand this is going to be a 6 toilet block plus with a similar changing table as well too. Is that correct?
Mr. Miller?
Thank you for the question, and through you, Mayor King. Yes, this facility will provide 6 non-gender specific cubicles with hand basins in each of those. It'll have one all abilities facility with an adult toilet, hand basin, baby change table, child toilet and hand basin. And then it'll also provide the second changing places facility, which provides the toilet, hand basin, shower, adult change table and the hoist facilities that are available.
Thank you. And just to follow up, you need to have a particular swipe card or a particular key that can get you into the other facility, to the changing places facility. Is that the way I understand it? So it's not open to the general public.
Yes, thank you for the question, through you, Mayor King. Yes, for the changing places facility, that's locked under the MLAC system, which is the Master Locksmith Access Key. Those members of the public that are eligible for issue of one of those keys have access to that facility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker 4, Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. I'm very pleased that we're moving forward with our new public toilets, and it is great that we will have a second changing place accredited facility in our community. And just to highlight how important this is, that families often have difficulty travelling unless they can get access to such facilities. So imagine being a family and wanting to go on holiday, you need to be able to access such facilities to be able to go anywhere. And so being able to utilise 2 of these within the area of Albury is very helpful to many in our community. It's not just people who want to go on holiday, it's people who want to make a shopping trip and come into town. So this is critical. It's to support families who want to go and have family time in our parks and leisure areas, and they can then utilise this facility as well. So it is a critical piece of infrastructure, and I'm really pleased that Albury is now able to bring this forward. This is something that councils across New South Wales have been trying to achieve in conjunction with Local Government New South Wales for some considerable years. In fact, my memory is that we discussed it 6 or more years ago at Local Government New South Wales. So this is critical for a lot of people within our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gluckin. Councillor Edwards, did you wish to close debate?
Thank you, Mayor King. Just to add that I think this will be a great addition to our Riverside area and a well overdue upgrade of the facilities there. As Councillor Gluckin mentioned, they're much closer to the riverside facilities that we've been developing than the existing ones. So that'll be really great for visitors and families and our community who use those facilities. And I'm really proud that our council is providing these not only accessible but all-inclusive facilities for our diverse community, and look forward to seeing it come to life.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. We'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. CM 13.3 Community and Cultural Grants, Round 2, 2022-2023. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council A receives and notes the report, and B endorses the recommended 2022-23 Community and Cultural Grant Program Round 2 allocations as follows. Westside Community Centre Seniors Social Group and Women's Empowerment Group, $3,000. Joanne Lancaster Acrobat Proprietary Limited World Repair Services, $3,000 with conditions. 3, Tabletop Public P&C Tabletop Artists in Residence Program, $3,500. 4, Mercy Connect Open Air Cinema Experience, $3,000. 5, Albury Wodonga Food Share Provide Food Support for the Albury Community, $3,000 with conditions. 6, Uncle Phil Murray Yudaki Workshops for Men and Boys, $2,680, partially funded with conditions. 7, Bricks on the Border Brickmaster, $1,500, partially fund. Total of $19,680.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards.
I second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Thurley, did you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King. To note that we had many, many more applications than what are shown there on the board, and a group of people, council staff and members of the community sat down and went through the propositions and listened and asked questions, and this is what we've finally arrived at.
Thank you. Question, Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. I notice a name on the list, number 10, Frank Calabria. But I also recall there was a Francesco Calabria in a previous report that we looked at tonight. Can staff confirm, is that the same applicant for both?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Just to confirm that that has been answered, and that is. Thank you. Any other speakers for or against? Councillor Thurley, did you wish to sum up? Happy to put the motion, councillors. Those for, those against? That motion is carried. CM 14, Officers' Reports for Noting. There are none. CM 15, Delegates Reports for Noting. There are none. CM 16, Notice of Urgent Business. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. Just a brief notice about, I attended the New South Wales Public Libraries Association meeting for the Southwest region last Thursday in Narrandera, and 2 elements I think are worthy of bringing to Council's attention. Trove funding has been committed. However, there is a little catch in it. It is only funded insofar as upgrading the infrastructure relating to Trove, and there is no additional funding for the operational side of Trove at this stage. The big problem is that, say, New South Wales, some 13% of libraries have pulled out of Trove because of the cost. And unfortunately, the roll-on effect of that is that those staying in now face a higher cost themselves. So there are still some lobbying to be done to improve Trove funding. I note that the federal member, on a couple of occasions, I've seen her champion Trove as a great resource. Unfortunately, the government that she was a member of were the ones that didn't fund this. The other one is an initiative by the Public Libraries Association called Birth to 5, Read and Thrive. And this is an attempt for public libraries to get young children into reading, into storytelling and so on. And it's relevant that New South Wales in Australia ranks number 6 in reading literacy, only beating the Northern Territory. 15% of school-age children, of preschool-age children, are vulnerable or at risk, and 25% are vulnerable with communication skills. So this program, Birth to 5, Read and Thrive, is a critical initiative of the Public Libraries Association. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Now we move into CM 17, confidential matters. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you, through you, to move the recommendation that we move into confidential item exclusive of press or public on the grounds that the matter pertains to information of the following: information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on the person with whom the council is conducting or proposed to conduct business; commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it or confer a commercial advantage on a competitor of the council. And this is with reference to Local Government Act 1993, number 30, section 10A2CD, little dotty I and D little dotty II.
Councillor Thurley.
Second that motion.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. We'll put the motion. Those for? Those against? Are there any statements or submissions from the public regarding the reasons as identified for this confidential item 17.1? In that case, the motion that has just been put has been carried to move into confidential. So we close the council at 6:49 p.m. So that motion to move into confidential is approved. The motion to move us into confidential has been carried. For our live stream viewers, we will now say goodbye. You can find the outcome of this confidential session in the meeting minutes, which are published on the Albury City website within 2 business days.